So what do we make, first of all, of what has happened today? Let's come to you first, Freda. I mean, so should Isla Adam be in a woman's prison?
Well, I just hope that the prison system is making the right choice here. I'm not qualified to make those kind of decisions. I'm more interested in why this story exists now, because we don't talk about rapists very often on the news. When rapists are convicted, it's not a big deal. It doesn't make the news. A lot of rapists don't even get convicted. The conviction rates are scarily low for rapists. But what we're seeing today is this mentioned every hour on the news. Now, the only reason it's being mentioned every hour on the news is because it's got the word trans attached to it. And I'm interested in the organisation that this lady represents, because she claims to be a feminist, but I can't see any feminism in anything she writes. All I can see is an obsession with trans women. And I'd like to put that to her, that why is she only interested in trans women? She was a feminist. She's really looking the wrong way on problems for women in this country.
Julie, are you transphobic, or are you a feminist, or are they mutually compatible? How would you describe yourself? How would you answer that?
Well, I think my concern is mainly for the women in prison who I have actually spoken to, who have actually had spent time in prison with a trans-identified man. And this was a few years ago, and after speaking to those women, I've been at the forefront of many protests against having any men within the female estate.
So, I mean, your stance on this is straight down the line that, if you have a penis, you should not be in a woman's safe space, whether that be a female prison, a changing room, a swimming pool changing room. Is that your take on this?
Most definitely, yes.
And why do you feel like that?
Well, especially for prisons, as I say, after speaking to female prisoners and what they went through within a prison sentence with a trans-identifying male, really shocked me. And that was that led me to read a wee bit more into this. And no man should be in any female spaces, especially female spaces that are there for women to recover from rape or domestic violence. They're there to recover from male violence. And there has to be male-free spaces for that, especially for their rehabilitation.
Freda, you can see that point, surely, that there are some very vulnerable women, especially in prisons,
yes,
who have been victims of male violence in particular. So they are going to be very, very uncomfortable with this situation.
Yes.
That doesn't make them transphobic.
Yeah, Dawn, I can totally appreciate that. There are very vulnerable women out there. I work with them all the time. I work for the LGBT Foundation in Manchester. We work with homeless women. We work with drug and alcohol dependent women. We work with women that are escaping domestic violence, and none of those women ever mention trans issues to me. What they mention is systemic misogyny, the kind of systemic misogyny that allows police officers to rape people. That's what they tell me. And this lady is looking the wrong way. Her organisation is called the Scottish Feminist Network, but the basic tenets of feminism are working to increase equality, human choice, eliminating gender stratification, ending sexual violence, promoting sexual freedom. This is regressive, what this lady stands for. Now, in prisons, there are definitely different rules about how safeguarding takes place. But in the public arena, I use women's spaces. I have cis women friends who support me. And I am safer when cis women respect me and they support me. This lady would be a threat to me in public.
Right. Julie, evidently you're a threat. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, someone who's never been convicted of any assault, crime or whatever. I'm a threat to you.
I've not been convicted of any assault or crime. But I've looked at your Twitter feed and I've seen the things you say.
Is the truth transphobic? Is the truth transphobic? That no men
It's trans-hostile. It's trans-hostile. That's what it is.
Well, I disagree. The truth is the truth.
What truth
and the women in prison deserve to have male-free recovery and rehabilitation. No man should be, and we're here to talk about the male rapist in a women's prison.
Yeah, but you don't care about that. You're talking about the situation in spaces outside of prisons.
It's not the first person to be put in a female prison in Scotland. We had a 6'5" convicted paedophile in Cornton Vale. Before Christmas, we had a massive protest there. And not just him, there's murderers been put in beside women. Peter Lang was a murderer who the two women prisoners that I spoke to had to share a prison with. A man who would walk about with an erection in the showers. So don't sit there and tell me I'm a threat. Because I certainly am not a threat. The truth is never a threat.
Freda, we do keep being told that, these are situations that never happen. And we have had several instances recently where basically predatory men have used the quite genuine transgender issue to access vulnerable women. So how do we stop that from happening whilst protecting, obviously, transgender rights, but also the rights of women and girls?
Well, the problem is that the narrative is that the problem is somebody being trans. Being trans is not a cause or effect of crime. Predatory men are going to be predatory men, whether they identify as trans or not. And that doesn't make any difference. You don't create this goes back to the gender recognition reform thing. And the only reason this lady is given a platform is because of the lobby groups that are against that. And we know that. I could talk to you for hours about For Women Scotland, organisations like Callie J. Keynes, who this lady supports, and they have nothing of value to say. They are linked to far-right groups, and they're anti-abortion. One of this lady's members, Lisa Keogh, is actually anti-abortion. What kind of feminism is that? It doesn't make any sense. The only reason this is on the table now, and we're talking about this trans rapist, I've heard the words trans rapist so many times today, and that is very dangerous because that filters down to the public, and it filters down to, there was a trans girl murdered a couple of weeks ago, Brianna Jai, and this rhetoric about trans people being a threat really does filter down. And it's really dangerous.
But do you accept, Freda, that there are men who will use transgender rights to access female spaces? I mean, look, we all accept there are very predatory men out there. Of course we do. But do you accept that men will use transgender rights to access vulnerable women, or do you just deny that ever happens?
It could happen, but it's not likely. What's more likely to happen is you're going to get arrested in a public space, in a club, in a bar, somewhere where there are lots of people around. At a festival, that's where women get harassed. It's very rarely in private spaces. I've been out on club nights when I've been touched by men, and I know that's a really horrible feeling if you're not prepared for it. And Dawn, I've listened to you talk, and you're quite level-headed about, you're quite a liberal person. You accept that there are lots of ways of looking at this. But the problem I have is if you weaponize the idea of trans people being a threat, then it becomes that all trans people are a threat. And then we have to justify our existence. We have to say, well, we're trans, and then we have to assimilate ourselves in society. I'm just who I am. It doesn't matter if I identify as male, female or not. People just treat me as they find me, and I don't expect any preferential treatment because of who I
could talk to you both all night. Julie, just one final word to you. What would you like to say, sum up your case here?
Yes, I mean, this far-right rhetoric is absolute nonsense. I'm just a wee woman for a Scottish scheme. And as far as Lisa Keogh is concerned, Lisa's got every right to say she doesn't agree with abortion. I disagree with her completely, as do many women. But it doesn't mean she doesn't have a voice. All women have a voice, whether we agree with each other or not. Abortion is something that I wholeheartedly agree with, and I'm certainly not against.
You know who agrees with you? Calvin Robinson.
I don't know who agrees with me. I do not agree with abortion.
Unfortunately, ladies, unfortunately, talking about having a voice, we have to go. We've run out of time.